Alright everybody, this is Unit 7, Video 4, and we're going to introduce the law of sines here. Make sure you have your Video 4 note sheet and your calculator ready to go. Alright, so in the last couple videos we've discussed what to do using the law of sines, and similar to the law of sines, the law of cosines is used to determine the measure of missing sides and angles of oblique triangles. Nothing different, just different situations. So what we're going to be looking at is if we have two sides and the angle between them, or if we know three sides. So if I have two sides and the angle that falls between them are known, then I will use the law of cosines. Or if I know all three side measures but I don't know any angle measures, we will use the law of cosines. So this would be side, angle, side, where the angle's between the two sides, or side, side, side. So here's where we will address these situations. I'm actually going to give you here the law of cosines. And so there's actually three forms of this, and they're just manipulations of each other depending on the information given. So here it is, the law of cosines. A squared, being a side, equals b squared plus c squared minus 2bc cosine of a. Another manipulation of this would be b squared equals a squared plus c squared minus 2ac cosine of b, or c squared equals a squared plus b squared minus 2ab cosine of c. So you're going to have to make up a way to remember this. I look at it as though that the ends are the same, so if I've got a squared, I've got the cosine of a, b squared, I've got the cosine of b, c squared, I've got the cosine of c. And then in between here, b squared, c squared gives me 2bc, and the a and the c, 2ac, the a and the b, 2ab. So you're going to have to find a way, but knowing one, you really should know all three that follow. So the different situations that you'll have, of course, is if I have a side angle side, I'm going to label a generic triangle here. And if I'm given, let's say, angle C and the two adjoining sides, then I would use the one that involves cosine of C, because that's the angle I have. So the first thing I'd be finding would be the missing side measure, C. Suppose I was given one with all three sides and I was not given any angle measures, then I would actually have to go to the largest side length and use that one first. So if A, side length A, was the largest, then I would use the first formula here and I would find angle A first. So I'm going to do three examples, and then there's some for you to try on your own. The first example comes from page 306. It is number 7. I'm going to draw the triangle at the top, and then I'm going to make my list of all the information, just as I've done with every other problem we've had. So I'm going to label each of these. Angle C is 28.3. Little b over here is 5.71. And little c, do I have that labeled correctly? I do not. Let's do that again. The angle C is 28.3 and little a is 4.21. Okay, so now we've got everything labeled, and I can see that the angle falls directly between my two given side measures. Well, since I'm given big C, I'm going to be finding little c, the side opposite, first. So I will be using c squared equals a squared plus b squared minus 2ab cosine of c. And I'm going to write all my information up here. I know I'm only finding one triangle, so this all is associated. And I'm going to fill it all in so I know what I have to find before I finish. Oops, 4.21. Let's erase that. Alright, So if I substitute all this information, I actually will find the next missing side. So I'm going to have c squared equals 4.21 squared plus 5.71 squared minus 2 times 4.21 times 5.71 times the cosine of 28.3. Now I'll be honest with you, I've had students in the past that will write everything out perfect and they'll type in the sine of 28.3. This is the law of cosines. Make sure you're using the correct button on your calculator. So carefully go ahead and calculate all of this, and we will come up with an answer for little c. So I came up with c squared to equal somewhere around 5.985 and a bunch of decimals. Make sure you take the square root of c squared so that you can find the approximation for side c, which was 2.45. So that is my answer up here, 2.45 inches. Alright, so the next up, I need to find another angle measure because that's all I have left. The key is that I want to go to the smallest angle first. Now that's different than what I had said previously where it was the largest side. This will be the smallest angle. So my smallest angle will be angle A because it's opposite the smallest side. So I'm going to use the information I just found. 2.45 divided by the sine of 28.3 is equal to 4.21 over the sine of angle A. So I'll find angle A next, and last I'll use 180 minus the two angles I have to find the third angle. So go ahead and use your cross multiplication here. Remember that you're using the inverse in order to find the actual angle measure. Okay, so I came up with 54.67 degrees. Using 180 minus angle A and angle C, I should find the third measure, which is 97.03 degrees. Double check that your smallest side is opposite your smallest angle and your largest side is opposite your largest angle. So this looks good to me, and we're ready to move on. Example number 2 is number 8 on page 306. Again, I'm going to draw the triangle here and get us started. Once again, I have two sides that are surrounding an angle, so I know that I'm going to have to use the law of cosines. So I'm going to write down my information up here so I know what I'll be looking for. Alright, and because I'm given angle A, I need to find little a first. So I will use a squared equals b squared plus c squared minus 2bc times the cosine of angle A. Filling in your values, a squared equals 2.78 squared plus 3.92 squared minus 2 times 2.78 times 3.92 times the cosine of 41.4. Obviously I ran out of room there. So go ahead and carefully calculate that and make sure that you take the square root in order to find little a. I came up with little a to equal approximately 2.60 yards. Make sure that you double check your math there if you came up with something different. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is go to the smallest side or the smallest angle, and I will find that one next. So that means I'm finding angle B next. So I'm going to take the 2.60 over the sine of 41.4, my given information, will equal 2.78 over the sine of angle B. This will lead me to find the second missing angle, and then I'll use the angle sum formula, 180 minus the two angles, to find the last angle. Go ahead and use cross multiplication and your sine inverse to find the angle. I came up with 45.06 degrees. Using the angle sum theorem, I'm going to go ahead and subtract from 180, and I got 93.54 degrees. Once again, double check to make sure that your largest side is across from your largest angle and your smallest side is across from your smallest angle. Alright, last situation would be if I'm given three sides and no angles at all. So let's go ahead and sketch this triangle quickly and label all of my sides. And I obviously here I'm going to have to find an angle first because that's all that's really missing. So I'm going to label all this real quickly, 3, 5, and 6. And then the key to this is you have to start with your largest side, which is different than what I had just told you. So we're going to find the largest side first here. Okay, it's a different problem, so it has a different set of rules. So to find the largest side here, I'm going to use c squared, or largest angle, equals a squared plus b squared minus 2ab cosine of c. Now everything is known, a, b, a, c, a, b, a, b, except the cosine of c. So that's my last step. 6 squared equals 3 squared plus 5 squared minus 2 times 3 times 5 times the cosine of c. Be very careful when you're doing this. I'm going to do more work than you need to on your very first one because there's a tendency of students to come up with no possible triangle, which is not the situation here. 36 equals 9 plus 25 minus 30 times the cosine of c. You absolutely, positively cannot combine those three things. This negative 30 is a coefficient on the cosine of c. You can subtract these values over to the other side. First, which is what I'm going to do, is I'm going to subtract this negative 34, or subtract 34, and get 2 equals negative 30 cosine of c. I'm going to divide by negative 30, and I'm going to get, I don't know what I'm going to get. Let's see. 2 divided by negative 30. Alright, so I'm going to get some value, negative 0.06 repeating equals the cosine of c. So what do? I use cosine inverse. So cosine inverse of your answer that you've got in your calculator will give you the angle measure for c. And I come up with angle measure of c to be 93.82 degrees. Next thing I'm going to do is go to the next largest side. So I'm going to work my way up. In this case, might not always be that way, but I'm going to work my way up and I'm going to find b using the law of sines. You can use the law of cosines over and over again, but it really is more work. So I'm going to have now that 6 over the sine of my newly found angle, 93.82, equals 5 over the sine of angle B. Using my law of sines here in cross multiplication, taking the inverse to find angle B, I will come up with 56.25 degrees. Now lastly, I could set up one more sine, law of sines proportion here to find angle A, or I could use the triangle sum theorem, and I know that I'm just going to go ahead and subtract from 180 and I will get to 29.95 degrees. Whew. All right, there we go. We've got all of our angle measures, and I have completed this entire problem. So I've got a few examples for you to try on the worksheet. Please try them so we can see what issues. It's one where it's a side angle side, and the second one is a side side side. So When do we use the law of cosines? That would be when we have side angle side, or we have side side side. The first thing you'll do here is find the side matching the given angle. Oh, I'm kind of answering this question. Where do I begin? And then you're going to go to the smallest side. In the side, 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 you're going to start with the largest, and then to the medium, and then to the small sides, or angles. So those are your rules for the law of cosines.